everybody. Joe here, the guy who broke the screen of his phone and had to get it fixed. So that's why I've been a little MIA lately. I've been dealing with that mess. And maybe one day I have a really funny story of what happened to me Friday. But that's a story for another time because today we are here to talk about UFC 315, a card that I had incredibly low expectations for. And I know some people were pleasantly surprised by this card. I wasn't. But mostly by the outcomes, not necessarily the quality of fight. So enough talk. Let's get into the fights. Because in the main event, we had Belal Muhammad versus Della Maddalena, who my heart was picking JDM to win. He was working with Craig Jones a lot, and he was doing very well. And I was like, you know what? Honestly, that's an aspect of his game that I think is pretty decent. I don't know if it's enough to necessarily stifle and destroy Belal Muhammad if that fight goes that way. But on the feet, I know he's going to be able to put on the pressure and make that work. So I was definitely very curious about that. And one thing I've noticed too in Belal Muhammad fights is when he fights these like really high level jiu-jitsu practitioners, he's a little afraid to go to the ground with them. And and if he does go to the ground with them, he's not looking to engage. He's very good at just like putting on the stifle and just holding for dear life. And case in point, like Damian Maya, that fight isn't terrible. Despite Belal Muhammad's best attempts, that fight is not terrible. But it is a fight that happens. um, and like and then or he'll be willing to stand with him, like Gilbert Burns. He stood with. You know what? Hey, credit to him for doing that. He did. He looked okay. Like he was his striking isn't great from a technical perspective, and he has pillow hands, but um, it works in some instances. Like he's always a little bit of a tough matchup for a lot of guys on the feet because of his constant pressure, and he's got for how big his shoulders are. My brain always expects T-Rex arms, but he has deceptively longer reach, or at least he knows how to make use of it in the striking end. He's also one of those guys, if he gets hit, he just throws right back, which goes against like your when you're striking, if anyone has any experience striking, if you're hitting a guy and they punch right back every time, they're firing back all the time. It's a little bit of a like small adjustment period in there. At least it's how it's always been for me. You know, it was something that was very awkward for me when I was doing a lot of boxing. Jabbing somebody who's throwing a right hand immediately after. It kind of gives you the sense of like a delayed reaction afterwards. Is kind of what it feels like, even though it really isn't. That's actually part of their strategy. And that used to lull me into a false sense of confidence, which means I would get hit, which is not the name of the game of the striking. So I was a little, that said, JDM shouldn't mess him up on the feet. Sean Brady, another one that he was like, I'm just going to strike with. So I should have thought about that aspect more going into this fight because he very rarely tried to wrestle JDM. And that's what happens. JDM scorched him on the feet for 5 rounds. I thought this was a clean sweep. 5 round clean sweep. JDM just lighting up Belal Muhammad. There was some, he landed some, Belal Muhammad landed some good shots. But the big thing was, as I mentioned earlier, was you take a jab and you fire right back. JDM would stop throwing out the jab first. He would go with a straight. He would switch stances, go into a straight off the open guard, and then dip out. And it was working wonders. He was attacking the body well, something we saw a decent amount of in this fight, and stuff like that. I was definitely really digging. And JDM looked really, really good, defending takedowns well. If it was on the ground, it wasn't on the ground for very long. He himself was going for takedowns as well. Very, very, very impressed with Jack Della Maddalena, who gets a clean, in my opinion, a 5-0 sweep on the champion, just in a clear win. I don't know if I want to say dominating yet. I need to let it sit because it's really easy to throw the domination kind of tag on fights. I want to kind of sit on this one when it's a little bit closer. If it's clear 5 rounds, but he wasn't destroying him out there. Like in terms of when I think destroying, I think like Frankie Edgar, Gray Maynard first round of that. That's like my opinion of like if he did that for 5 rounds, then like obviously yeah, domination, destruction. But Belal had moments of success. They were just very few and far between. Um, there are no moments of success in a domination for me. So that's why I, not, I'm going to say it's a clear win, not necessarily a domination, but JDM looked incredible. Looked like he was levels ahead of Belal Muhammad out there, which is crazy because Belal Muhammad might now go down as one of the, oh, that happened, champions of all time. I thought it was very unlikely he would become champion. And I thought it would, him and Sean Strickland were they were champions of all time. And DDP kind of is shedding that because DDP was like that for a long time with me, but he's starting to shed that. But what's next for these guys? Wow. So Belal Muhammad, I got to be honest, I think fight with obviously I know he wants that Colby fight. Um, like even if he says he doesn't, I know he kind of does. Uh, Colby wants that fight with him. I think I think he probably should fight Ian Gary. If I'm being honest, I was like Ian Gary should fight the winner of Usman Buckley was what I was thinking. But I think you can fight Gary. Because from Belal Muhammad's perspective, if you beat Ian Gary back in the mix, you know, the only guy who's beaten this guy is Shafkan, who everyone's ducking. Still, I'll talk about that. Um, and with Belal Muhammad, like you kind of want to, you know, get that get that back. You want to, you know what I mean? For Ian Gary, for his perspective, why that fight is enticing, in my opinion, is you already have proven that like you're probably around a title shot. You need like that one win to really get you there. How is Belal Muhammad, a former champion, not a win? And I think in his mind, they both look at that fight as winnable. I could see them both seeing avenues of victory for both of them, and I don't see why. Now, will I watch that fight? I didn't say that. I didn't say I'd be excited to watch it. I just said that makes sense. For JDM, what's next? So I know what there's a two-pronged question. What should be next and what is next? There's the two things right here. What should be next is very clear. Shotcut. How are we not just the reason this fight was made exactly the way it was because Shotcut is in Ramadan, doesn't fight during Ramadan, unlike Bilal Muhammad. Credit to him for fighting during Ramadan. I want to stress that. I should have mentioned that earlier. But it was a fight during Ramadan, and he's still recovering from like a knee injury that he fought Ian Gary with back in December. Shotgun. How is this? How is this a thing? Well, turns out Islam Makhachev does not want to fight Ilia Topuria. He wants to move up to 170 pounds. JDM said, "Yeah, sure, I'll get it. I'll beat him up, and I'll get this win back for Volk, my countryman." I kind of dig that mentality, but there's two terrifying elephants in the room. Shopcott and Ilia Taporia are both like, dude, what? Come on. Both just like, really? I'm right here. No, no. Shopcott's getting, and JDM said, it sucks it's annoying and it sucks for him, but hey, man, it is what it is. Money fight. I want this money. I get it. UFC pays 40 bucks pays 40 bucks to their fighters, it feels like, you know, especially with the US economy right now. 50K, 50K for a bonus. You know what 50K used to be? Like, or to get 50K dollars worth in 2020, I think it was. I think that was when Dan Ige's nickname came in. To get the same value of 50K for your money, it needs to be 61 point something K. Think about that. Our economy's in the crapper. Not to be political, but I ain't gonna blame anybody. But our economy's in the crap. Um, so our dollar ain't worth very much. AKA our bonuses are worthless, and the UFC paying you in USD is worthless. See what I'm getting at? So like I understand going for the money in this case. A very funny side effect of how bad our economy is going into MMA is we're going to get meritocracy fights? No, we're going to get more money fights. We're not paying. We are UFC already doesn't pay very much, and now what they're paying isn't worth anymore. Kind of a funny situation there. Um, But Topuria, I feel bad for him because I mean, I feel bad for Shaka. I feel worse for Shaka, but Topuria I feel pretty bad for because Topuria, in my opinion, I think he was such a dominant champion of who he was knocking out at 145. You're on a hot streak. You got to kind of ride that hot streak. Well, why not just be like? I think there's only two fights that make sense for me up at 155 because and I think that's either Sarukian makes sense too, but Sarukian should already have a title shot. Let's be honest. But it's Makhachev or Charles are the only two fights that like make sense to me at 155 for him. And I mean, if you really want to do Patty, watch that massacre. Be my guest. Now for the co-main event, a fight that I despised on multiple levels. Valentina Shevchenko defeats and defends her belt against Manon Fiorot in a very close fight that kind of brought back the age-old question of control versus damage. I think this fight, now I'm going to stress this. I want to stress this. I think, despite the age-old question of control and damage, I think the winner of this fight was Shev. I think she won 3 rounds. Because I don't, you know, that's just me. I think she won 3 rounds. Am I a Shev hater? Absolutely. Am I going to make a Shevchenko joke here based on bad judging? Yes, I am. I'm going to do that. It's who I am. We know who we are, you know. But I'm going to defend Shevchenko because I think she won this fight. But her fight in Manon Fiorot, I've seen some discourse online of the control versus damage. Now, I am going to pose this question. Uh, I think it comes down to what what you yourself. I think we should have a uniform kind of judging style in this stuff. Uh, so notoriously, I say notoriously because for Shevchenko fans, this is notoriously, and I'm not throwing shade at you guys. Of course, I love you guys. Yeah, it's all love here. But I still think Talia Santos beat Shevchenko because I picked control, and I'm calling myself out here because Manon Fiorot was the controller, Shevchenko was the damager in this fight. Um, and critically of me, once again, I think Volkanovski beat Makhachev in their first fight, and that is a damage type of stance I took. And I also picked Brandon Moreno in the very close second, or is that the third? It's the third Pantoja fight, title fight. I picked Moreno, and, and I also picked him against Figueiredo 3. I picked him in that one as well. Is that biased because I'm fans of those guys? Yeah, outside of Talia Santos, like I'm a fan of those two, of Moreno and Volk. I'm a fan of those two guys, obviously. So there's potential bias there, and I think that's 100% a valid critique against me. But Manon Ferrer was the controller, so if you have been picking the controller in those fights, I think I think I can understand why you would think Manon Ferrer won this fight. I don't think she did. I think despite the fact that she was controlling a lot of this fight, she was getting eaten up on the feet, which is surprising because, gonna be honest, Shevchenko's striking in the last couple fights has not looked good for me. Has not looked good to me. No, actually, that's not fair because in the Noche UFC fight, not last year but the year prior, in the second Grasso fight, I didn't think it looked that bad. Did I think she'd lose that fight? I think that fight's a draw. I think that fight's a draw. I mean, if I'm allowed to meme, my meme answer is that last round was a 10-7 Grasso. So Grasso won the fight. But I think it's a draw. I think that fight's a draw based on how I score because I don't score a 10 plus scoring system. I have two scorecards every time, so kind of is what it is. Um, but yeah, Shevchenko won. Was it a good fight? No, it stunk. Was it Shevchenko's fault? Not really. Takes two to tango. And Minofra wasn't looking to tango. She was looking to, Holly Holm it a little bit, Jake Shields it a little bit, and it is what it is. Is that division good again? Is that division still good? I still think that division's still good. Is it in a worse shape? I think with Valentina as champion. Yeah. Um. Typically, typically like because like here this is the hypocrisy of this statement I want to stress. Welterweight is interesting because we have JDM as champion again. It wasn't interesting when Belal Muhammad was champion. Funny how that works out, right? It was This division was interesting with Alexa Grasso as champion. I thought. I think the consensus is it isn't with Valentina as champion. Weird how that works out. It's only like one little change, and that's like the kind of hypocrisy of that. And I'm saying that to call myself out. Like, am I it- the end all be all? And if I understand if you have like critiques against how I talked about this, am I just a hater? I'm trying not to make this like Joe Neal just hates Shevchenko because I'm not trying to sound like that, but that's why I'm calling myself out because it sounds like that when I say it out loud. And I'm calling myself out here. Um, that said, did not like this fight. You know, had a, I was like, it was very late because I was very busy yesterday. I was watching this. I was like, oh my God, I'm trying not to fall asleep. Not a good fight. But you know, if I was very good with a horrible judge's decision, Ayman Zahabi, Jose Aldo. Aldo for 2 rounds puts I mean, I thought Aldo won the first round clean. Second round closer, but I think Aldo cleanly won. In the third round, Aldo's gassed into getting beaten up by Zahabi. I really want to know what happened with that. Like, why did they change the weight this fight? It was initially going to be 135, and then it went to like 143. That's when they pulled him off the scale. And everyone was cool with it. Like it was like oh hey, just a small last minute change here. What happened? Is there a health reason? If so, then Aldo probably needs to retire because it sounds like it was him, and him being so gassed. I wonder if it was like a dehydration thing. And if so, I'm very very concerned for the his health because he is the greatest. I'm obviously a massive Aldo fan, despite him potentially money laundering. Excuse me. Oh, sorry, Carl. My mouth was getting very dry. But despite him being, like like that's a pretty hard to defend kind of thing. But that said, although my favorite, my second favorite fighter of all time, behind ranks. We're gonna go this way. You think I'd be better at this fight? This guy, Boss Rutten. Aldo is my second favorite behind him. And Aldo, as if you're interested, I have a hot take video on the channel of Jose Aldo being the greatest of all time. I think of my case very well. He is the greatest of all time in my mind. It's either him or George. Those are the one and two. There is no three, four, and five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10, however many, even close to them. It's those two. There's no question. And I think Aldo beats George slightly. Um, but I think he got robbed here in this fight. Despite how bad that last round, I think I could see a draw. I could see a draw. Someone saying a draw, but because I could see someone saying that last round was 10-8. But I think Aldo got robbed here personally. I think it was a 10-9 last round. And once again, full bias. That's why I said that's why I bring up my fandom of him. Potential full bias involved. Aldo, I think, won first 2 rounds and lost a 10-9 final round. That is 2 robberies in a row against Mario Bautista and I hate it. I hate it here. I hate this card. I hate this card. Did I mention I hate this card? Because guess what? For the rest of the card, I get to talk about another fight I hate. Natalia Silva versus Alexa Grasso. Alexa Grasso flat out lost by unanimous decision, got outstruck by Natalia Silva. It was not fun for me. Not a fun night for me. Benoit Saint-Denis in the opener for the card beat Kyle Belect and got him by submission and arm triangle in round one. Mike Malott ended the prelims with a second round not KO over Charles Radke. Jasmine Jasudavicius, surprisingly, in my opinion, beat Jessica Andrade by submission with a rear naked choke. Modestas Bukauskas, a potential boy of mine. I haven't quite committed to my boydom of him, but I have what's it called? He beat Ian Kutalaba by split decision. Navajo Sterling beat Ivan Urslan by unanimous decision. Mark Andrew Barrio beat Bruno Silva with some nasty strikes in round one, KO. Daniel Santos beat Zhang Yong Li by unanimous decision. And finally, Rexat Almaxon beat Brad Katona by knockout in round one. But that's it for me. Sorry, I've been busy. I've been dealing with a lot of me, like a lot of me and life issues. Last week, work was crazy for me. I've been given some new responsibilities at work, so it's kind of taking some time. And whenever I do have time, I'm like decompress, Joe, come down, bring it down. So you know, I've been just kind of not. I don't know. Trying to think what the word is. Not coping. Coping is not the word. But just decompressing. Taking some time. Not mental health, but like because I'm fine. Like my mental health is fine and everything like that. It's more of me just like kind of bringing it down and keeping it in check before it gets bad. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. And that and my phone was most of last week, so it was really hard to reach out to Carl and be like, just I'm gonna be ready. Like I literally got it fixed like yesterday, and then I was with family after that, and was like, "Don't worry, Carl, I'm about to watch the card now. I just got home." So, sorry for if I put any fears and worries for you guys. I apologize. It was like a situation, but that's it for me. Thanks. I'm Joe with the INC. Thanks so much for watching because I've rambled for 20 plus minutes.